Good afternoon. For the next of our series of interviews with specialists in particular areas that we thought would be of interest to you as local business owners. Today I'm joined by Jon Britain from Upskill Group. Now I know Jon because he does training around management and teams, but today we're going to talk about unconscious bias. So good afternoon, Jon.
Yeah, afternoon, Rupert. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
No problem at all. So, well, let's just start off. So, unconscious bias has been in the news a lot this year, hasn't it?
Yeah, he's hit the headlines a few times. I think it was back in June when Channel 4 made a TV program, The School That Tried to End Racism. Then, in July, the BBC reported that school results may be affected by biases. And then, I think it was also in July when Keir Starmer pledged to undertake unconscious bias training when critics claimed he devalued the Black Lives Movement protests with a moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see why that made the news.
Yeah.
So, Jon, before we start, I suppose the important thing to know is what is unconscious bias?
Well, simply put, they're a shortcut. They're an automatic process. Now, scientists have calculated, I should say, that we take in something in the region of 11 million bits of information per second.
Whoa.
It's hard to visualize, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But our conscious mind only receives a very small amount, just 50 bits per second. So our unconscious mind is hard at work in the background, taking out most of that information. So do you know why this is, Rupert?
No, but I'd love to. Thank you. Yes.
Well, if you go back about 2,000 years ago, when man was roaming the savannah grasslands with nothing but a club for defense against other tribes and the woolly mammoth, saber-toothed tigers, and I don't know what else was around, you know, he had to make a decision pretty damn quick. Otherwise, it was curtains. So he had to decide whether it was time to stand, fight, or flight. So they're the reasons we still have this historic part of our brain with us to help us to keep safe.
So it's an evolutionary thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We still got it.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose in today's world, then, well, first question is how are biases formed? Are we born with them, or do we develop them? How does it work?
Well, I think we develop them, but we can pick them up at very, very young age. They come from many different places, and so they can come from our family. They can come from our education, they can come from life's experience, or they can come from Twitter, Facebook, or whatever other mass media sources we decide to read.
Okay, and so I mean, give us an example. I suppose it's got to be the starting point.
Yeah, well, the first thing to say there is there's rather a lot of them. When I was researching this back earlier in the year, I couldn't decide whether there were 5, 10, 15, 20, or how many hundred there were. So there are many, and in my training courses, we generally discuss about 9 or 10. However, today, I'm just going to mention 3.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to mention affinity bias, confirmation bias, and halo bias. So affinity bias is when we tend to like those people who are very much like us. So maybe they're the same age as us, the same skin color, they have the same interests as us, the same education, very, very similar. And that's because we find people similar to us very easy to develop a rapport with. And then we're going to talk about, confirmation bias. This is when we're seeking to find information to confirm our pre-existing ideas and assumptions. And then we have halo bias. Well, very simply, this is when everything that someone does, we just think is wonderful because we like them.
Okay, that seems fair enough. So it sounds then like affirmation bias is pretty much, I suppose, if you look back in tribal times when we were all living on the savannah or wherever and trying to avoid being attacked by wild animals or by other tribes, I guess. A lot of that is going to be about recognizing who is the same as us and therefore unlikely to be a threat to us. and anyone
Yes.
different presumably is a threat to us. Then with the confirmation bias, I suppose if that's pretty much our first impression of somebody, so you're almost working on the basis of having to disprove that bias as the conversation, as the meeting, as the acquaintance goes on.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that biases can be unintentional, and they aren't intentional, and they are just how we see the world through our personal lens.
Yeah. Yes, I suppose it's our view of what's going on. Yeah.
Mm.
So why is this important to organisations? I suppose is the next question, isn't it?
Yeah, now for me, this overlaps with another one of my favourite subjects, and why I'm interested in this. I believe that it affects organisations because if members of staff, for example, they're not being listened to, they're not being heard, they're not getting along with their colleagues, they're not going to find it very difficult to connect with other people in the workplace, going to find it difficult to connect with their manager, difficult to connect with whatever's going on, and they're not going to perform at their best. And employee engagement is pretty low anyway, and so we really need to be doing something about this to prevent making it worse.
Okay, so a personality thing.
Yeah, it can be personalities, but I mean it can affect organizations in quite a big way, because if we have, say, group think, for example, then we're not going to be able to connect with all our customers out there, because we're going to have very similar ways of thinking and doing, for example, and if we can't connect with a wide range of diverse cultures and so forth, as we become more multicultural,
Yeah.
and as we start to probably sell more worldwide, they're going to lose out a tremendous amount of business. So there is a tremendous upside to this. Get it right, and businesses can really thrive and do well.
And so, I mean, that's from an organisational point of view. What about the individuals involved as well?
Yeah, the individual, they can miss out on opportunity. They might miss out on a job interview. They might miss out on getting promotion. They might miss out on training opportunities. Now, this could build up to create frustration, and they're going to feel pretty peeved by missing out on so many opportunities. And again, it's going to go back to engagement. They're going to sort of lose their morale and not really do their best at work every day, knowing that their voice probably won't be heard, knowing that they probably won't get all the praise they really deserve for all their hard work. So not only can they be engaged, it can lead to worse. It can lead to bullying, harassment, and time off work and those sorts of things. So it can have a big impact on the individual simply because their qualities, their talents, they're not being realized. They're not being allowed to do the best job they can at work.
Okay. Well, I suppose the next question then becomes, what can we do to minimise our unconscious biases?
Yeah, well, I've got a few things here, but I'm just going to mention three. The first is to start to think about what unconscious biases we have, because this unconscious, we don't know. And so there are a couple of ways that we can do this. We can speak with a colleague to check out, have a good conversation with, if something happened during the day, you can reflect upon that situation with them. And also you can reflect upon the situation as soon as it's happened, or you can reflect upon it later. So, what decision did I make? Why did I make that decision? Sort of like reflective learning, we know. So what did we do? What worked? What didn't? What can we do differently next time? So I think it's trying to discover what biases we actually have.
Yeah.
My second tip is to focus on the person. All right. So you don't focus on their characteristics, meaning their gender, their skin color, and maybe the way they talk, maybe the way they dress, for example. If you focus on the person, then you're more likely not to be biased in the situation. And the third thing I'm going to mention is increase your exposure to biases. So if you have a feeling that maybe you do have a bias against a certain group, a skin color, a culture, or people of a certain education, if you can mix with those people, then you're far more likely to begin to understand them. Because I think a lot of it is a lack of understanding. We just simply don't know about them, and so we're not naturally going to connect with them. So we may need to, put a little bit of effort in first. And that just reminds me about one of my favorite phrases. It's the universal law of reciprocity. If you give somebody what they want and need, then generally they'll give you what you want and need, but sometimes we have to make the effort first.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, actually, that's very much fear of the unknown by the sound of things. Actually,
Yeah.
because you don't know the person, you're scared about what they may represent, what they may be. The reality is, of course, once you've had that initial conversation, you'll probably find that most of your fears are completely unfounded.
Yeah, that's it. I lived in Asia for a few years. I was L&D manager in a hotel. I was living in a completely different culture, thinking, I'm not sure about the way they're looking, the way they're dressing, the way they're speaking, and so forth. And so the effort that I put in, and I did put a lot of effort in, it more than repaid itself. I had a great time at work. I had a great time with friends, and I learned a different culture, and I learned about myself, and it's a time that I'll always look back on. But I had to make that effort, and it paid back in spades. And in organizations, if they put that little bit of effort in too, then it will pay them back in spades too. Well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the unconscious bias, almost by definition, you're never actually going to get rid of all your unconscious biases, are you? Because as you identify one, you're going to, I suppose there's another one that's going to become exposed, if you like. Or you've got a pyramid, haven't you? So you start at the top with the one that's most obvious, you take that one away, and the next one appears, and you're constantly going to be digging down through all your unconscious biases.
Yeah, I think so. I generally don't know how many unconscious biases the average person has, but it's about self-awareness, isn't it? And I think that we need to become more and more self-aware. We need to be have good relationships with those people around us who can help us to identify our biases. And like I say, reflecting upon them can bring them to the surface. And so, it's a lifelong learning process, isn't it? If you want to, that is, people like us are more likely to continue to develop ourselves as we go on throughout our entire careers and throughout our lives, and actually enjoy doing so.
Yeah. And I thought, I mean, also I suppose the environment you're in as well is going to impact how easy or how open you are to picking up your unconscious bias. If you work in an environment where your colleagues are prepared to have a word with you, or even it's acceptable, and you're the sort of person that will accept the feedback from your colleagues, you're going to identify these unconscious biases much more easily than if you're in the sort of environment that maybe is a bit hostile in the way it works. Everyone's very defensive and doesn't want to be seen to be doing anything wrong. That's probably the sort of environment where it's going to be harder to unearth those unconscious biases. And of course, if you don't know about it, you can't do anything about it going forward.
Yeah, I love those challenges, Rupert, because
You go.
building great relationships, that really helps here. So when people become more self-aware, and when they can build trust with others around them, then communication starts to flow much easier. And so we're going to feel happier about going to work in those situations, because we're going to be able to communicate with the people around us, going to be able to trust them. We're going to be able to take feedback from them in the right way, knowing that they've got our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, making sure that the team environment, the work environment, is a safe place to probably put your hand up and go, well, actually, I might have a bias here, can somebody help me with this? Can we talk about it? And so, when people like each other, trust each other, you're able to do that.
I suppose also bigger advantages as well, isn't it? On the one hand, you're dealing with the unconscious bias, so you're getting the right people in the right jobs. On the other hand, you're also building a business, an organisation where everyone works far better together and is far more productive, working for the benefit of the overall organisation.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, simply put, when people feel happy, their performance improves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to do whatever we can, to make sure that people in the workforce, they're given the opportunity to speak, they're given the opportunity to be heard, the opportunity to probably be creative or innovative if that's what fits, because these are skills that we need going forward over the next few years. So it's about being given maybe an opportunity to express yourself. When we pull those things together, then we can find what the employee really wants to do and enable them and give them the platform to do it, then we're going to get better business performance, aren't we?
I suppose also the other thing about this is in recruitment as well. So when we're recruiting people to come to work for us, now I've always been quite conscious that I don't want people like me working for me, which I know sounds silly, but I've always believed it's best to have an environment where the people that you're working with disagree with you, so you have that healthy debate going on. There's also an element, though, in some job roles, there are particular traits that you need to look for in a person, which arguably could be related to the biases as well. How do you separate the two?
I think that when you're interviewing, the best thing you can do is have somebody with you, because you can't spot your own unconscious biases, can you? However, if you've got someone with you, then they can help you at least to identify them. But I think it's keeping that awareness high of unconscious bias. Make it something that we're able to talk about in the workplace, so that people don't shy away from having those difficult conversations.
So I suppose going off a slight tangent now, then, I know you because of what you do around management and team and all the training that you do with Upskill Group. But so how did you become interested in unconscious bias?
Well, it was just after lockdown, actually, when new opportunities seemed to come along my way. So I grabbed them with both hands, thinking this is quite exciting. And so I got the opportunities to deliver a training in situations such as digital well-being, and it was environmental awareness. Along with it came unconscious bias, and
Okay.
this does seem to have hit the ground running. It's been a very popular topic this year, and it's been one that I've thoroughly enjoyed learning about, can I say, and one I certainly wished I'd learned about earlier, and it's enabling me now, when I'm delivering training on management or teams or whatever, to bring that knowledge to the forefront, to help that manager, to help that organization. And so also, it's a little bit, I think it's the unfairness of it. When I see people being discriminated against because of their color, sex, whatever, and they're not getting that opportunity to get a job interview, they're not getting that job despite possibly being the best person for that job, that doesn't just affect their work life, that affects their life generally, doesn't it? And so I sort of got quite passionate about that, just because of those reasons, in a similar way that I do employee engagement. When people are disengaged, they're not just having a bad time at work generally, they're not living the life to the quality that they really could be if they had a good work environment to enjoy.
Okay. So so anyone who does want to work with you, Jon, an Upskill Group, so how do they get in contact with you? First question, and what sort of things should they be contacting you about?
Sure. Thanks, Rupert. Yeah, LinkedIn's the first one to think of. So please find me on LinkedIn. My website is there, so it should be easily to find. And what would you like to talk to me about? Well, Upskill Group, we cover most topics needed in the workplace, everything from employees such as assertiveness, personal impact, personal effectiveness, those types of things, teamwork, first-time management, leadership, and employee engagement. So between us, we can cover most things that are needed in the workplace. So yeah, the whole aim of the organization really is to help people to love their jobs, because when people love their jobs, they're more likely to love their life. And the result being organizations are going to love their profits. And so that's my why. That's our purpose.
Excellent. Cool. John, it's been lovely talking to you today. Very informative. Thank you for that. And yeah, I suppose actually it's made me think a little bit about what my unconscious biases are, and then actually starting to just think through the process of having, of identifying one bias, there's going to be another one. I'm just going to have that continual unconscious biases I've got to dig myself into. And it's always good to know it comes for good historical reasons. But of course, not all of those are particularly relevant in the modern workplace, are they? So it's actually knowing about them and being able to do something about them that's so important.
Yeah, and we can do something about them. Big gains to be had by putting a little bit of effort in there.
John, thanks for your time today. Great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it, Rupert. Thanks very much.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye-bye.